Okay, we're on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, and we're a few lines into it because we were trying to determine with whether the Mishnah, when it says you have until this time to say Shmona Esrei for Shacharis, does it mean ad ve'ad bichlal or ad ve'lo ad bichlal? Is it until inclusive or until non-inclusive? And so the Gemara's conclusion was that it's until inclusive. So when the Gemara says, or the Mishnah says you have until the fourth hour, it means you have until and inclusive of the fourth hour to recite Shmona Esrei, according to Rabbi Yehuda.
The whole of the fourth hour.
You have the whole fourth hour. Yeah. So now the Gemara says, Amar of Nachman, which is now where it's probably about 15 to 20 lines down. Amar of Nachman, Af Ananami Tanina. We have a brisa that explicitly states this. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Heyid Chamisha Dvar. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, one of the early Tanoim, who lived in the very, very early Mishnaic period, he testified 5 things. And when we say that he testified 5 things, meaning that he was bearing testimony in a very precarious time in Jewish history, where there was a lapse in a large rabbinic community, so he needed to make sure that people remembered the traditions of the temple times. And he testified, Shemiman in Esakitana, that number one, that there are certain times when we encourage and we educate a little girl to do miyun. The process of miyun is such that it's a rabbinic marriage for a girl who's under the age of bas mitzvah, that normally when a father wants to marry off his daughter that's under age of bas mitzvah, he can do so, and that marriage is a deoraisa marriage. If, however, the daughter's father passes away, then the rabbis allowed for her mother or her brother to marry her off, but it's only a rabbinic marriage, such that there's a special escape opportunity for her to get out of the marriage by just appearing before Beis Din and saying, I no longer wish to be married to this man or this young man, and therefore the halacha would be that the marriage is over, even without requiring her to get a get. That's the process called miyun, and normally we don't encourage miyun, but there are certain instances where we do. What would be an example where we would encourage miyun? Where there's a compelling reason for this man who's married to this little girl to marry this little girl's sister. Let's say this little girl's sister was married to Reuven's brother Shimon, and Shimon passed away, and now Shimon's widow, who's this little girl's sister, falls to Yibum for Reuven. The only problem is that if Reuven is married to the Yavama's sister, he can't do the mitzvah of Yibum. If, however, we educate this girl to do miyun, then it turns out that there's a retroactive nullification of the marriage, and therefore it's permitted now for Reuven to do Yibum. So under those circumstances, we would encourage the little girl to do miyun so that we could have a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Yibum. That's number one. That when you have a woman who's a true aguna, which means that her husband has disappeared, and we don't know whether he's alive or dead, and one witness comes along and says that I saw him die. Normally, although you need 2 witnesses to permit a woman to remarry, the rabbis said we will allow even 1 witness because we assume that a woman will be extra careful before she takes the step of getting remarried because she doesn't want her future children to be mamzerim. The third thing that he testified is that he remembered that they had once put a rooster to death for having killed a small child. Meaning that when the Torah says that if an ox, let's say, gores a human being and kills the human being, you put the ox to death, that's not limited to just an ox. It applies to all animals, even like a little chicken. But if the little chicken, Nebuch, killed the baby, so then the chicken gets put to death as well through stoning. He also testified how aged must wine be in order to be usable as a libation on the altar. It has to be at least 40 days old. And also that the morning tamid could be offered only within the first 4 hours of the day. So what do we see from here? Shema mina ad va'ad bichlal shema mina. So we see that based upon the language that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava uses, that, in other words, he says that it could be offered during the fourth hour. This is an indication that since Rabbi Yehuda had said that the time for davening Shemona Esrei corresponds to the time of offering the Korban Tamid, so we see that you are allowed to offer we see that it's ad va'ad bichlal, that when Rabbi Yehuda says you have until the fourth hour, it's inclusive of the fourth hour. Amar Rav Kahana, halacha for Rabbi Yehuda hol u'tnan b'bechirasa kavase. Rav Kahana says the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that you only have within the first 4 hours to daven Shemona Esrei for Shacharis. And why? Because there is a Mishnah in Idios, which is what we just quoted, that goes like him, which states that the Korban Tamid in the temple was only offered in the first 4 hours, and therefore that indicates that Shacharis is only during the first 4 hours of the day. Let's go on. V'al Tamid shel Shachar shekarev ba'ar b'shos, that the Tamid shel Shachar, he said, was offered during the fourth hour, or at 4 hours. So what does this mean? So man tanu laha, ditznan v'cham has-shemesh v'namas be'ar b'shos. So who was the author of the following brisa? The brisa says that when the Torah describes the mun, it says that when the sun would heat up, the mun would melt away. That's how it was disposed of. And so the brisa says that this took place ba'ar b'shos. This took place at the fourth hour. Ata omer ba'ar b'shos, o ena ela b'sheshos. Maybe no, says the brisa, maybe the mun melted away, indicating that the morning is over at 6 hours. So therefore, kishehu omer kechom hayom harkashay sha'os amor. But it says by the heat of the day. That's indicative that kechom hayom is another pasuk in Sefer Berachos, that it talks about Avraham Avinu, who was standing by the heat of the day. Now, heat of the day is different from heat of the sun. The previous pasuk where we talked about the month says v'cham hashemesh. By implication, what that means that only the sun was emitting heat, but the ground was not yet hot. So that's talking about a time that is before kechom hayom, which implies midday, where not only the sun is hot, but the ground is hot as well. So ha'ma'ani mekayim v'cham hashemesh v'namas be'ar b'shos. So therefore, when it says that when the sun became hot and the mun melted away, that happened at Arba Shos, so then money, lo Rabbi Yehuda v'lo Rabbanan. So the problem is, says the Gemara, in analyzing this brisa, it turns out that this is neither like Rabbi Yehuda nor the Rabbanan. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda ad Arba Shos namid safrahu. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, the fourth hour is also considered morning. And because we just said it's inclusive of the fourth hour. And the problem is, like Rashi explains, Hadamashma da arba lav boker hu daksiv ayil ketua so baboker b'cham hashemesh v'namas hanosa. Because it says by the mun that they only gathered it during the morning. And then, after the morning was over, it melted away. And umidamuki v'namas ba'arba shos, and if you're telling me that at the fourth hour it melted away, michlal delav zman lakituhu v'lav boker migri, it means that the fourth hour itself is not considered morning anymore, because it's not time to gather the mun anymore. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the fourth hour is also morning. And Rabbanan ad chatzos namid safrahu, and according to the Chachamim, both also not only the fourth hour, but the fifth hour and the sixth hour, all the way until midday, is also morning. So how can you tell me that they only gathered the mun in the morning, and yet it melted during the fourth hour? So Iboy is Ema Rabbi Yehuda, Iboy is Ema Rabbanan. So the Gemara concludes it can go either like Rabbi Yehuda or the Rabbanan. Iboy is Ema Rabbanan, Omar Kra Baboker Baboker, Chalkehu Lishnei Bekarim. So one answer is that it says in the pasuk that they gathered it in the morning. Why do you have to say the word Baboker twice? That implies that what the Torah really is trying to tell you, that they only gathered it by dividing the morning hours into half, and in the first half of the morning they gathered the mun, which means only during the first 3 hours, because according to the Chachamim the morning goes until Chetzos, so that's a 6-hour morning, and therefore they only gathered it during the first 3 hours. So therefore it works out according to the Chachamim when it says that it melted during the fourth hour, meaning it melted after the 3 hours were over. The Ibo is Ema Rabbi Yehuda, Hay Boker Yisera Lahaktim Lo Shah Echas. So, and you could also answer that it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, because when the Torah says Baboker, that they gathered it in the morning, The extra word in the morning was to tell me that they could only gather it until 1 hour before morning was over. But really, morning is the first 4 hours inclusive. But when it came to the mon, they could only gather it during the first 3 out of those 4 hours. Dekuli alma miha v'cham hashemesh v'namas ba'arba shos. My mashma. Everyone happens to agree, however, that based on what the Brisa had said, that when the sun became hot, or when the sun became heated, that means that it started the 4th hour. So where do you see that means it's the 4th hour? So Amar Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov Amar Kra v'cham hashemesh v'namas. Because the pasuk says that the sun became hot, and then that caused the mon to melt. Ezo hi shah shehashemesh cham v'hatzel tzonein. So what is the time of day? When the sun is hot, but the shady places are still cool, because the sun has not hit them yet. So heavy omer ba'ar b'shos, that's only logical that, meteorologists go out and they gauge these things. That's the proper time of the day. It's basically, it's like around, if you're dealing with a 12-hour day, it's like 9 a.m. in the morning. You can go out into the sunny spot on a hot day, and it's really hot, but when in the shade, everything is still cool.
Well, we hold, like it says here before, halacha Rabbi Yehuda.
That's what we hold, lechatchila for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But it says Iboy Sema you can have either.
What?
Iboy Sema Rabbanan, Iboy Sema Rabbi Yehuda.
No. That's an answer to who this brisa goes according to. That's a totally different issue. Tfilas hamincha ad ha'erev v'chulei. The Mishnah then had said that you can daven mincha according to the Chachamim until evening sets. Amarle Rav Chisda Rav Yitzchak, Hasam Amar Rav Kahana, Hasam Amar Rav Kahana, Halacha Kerebbi Yehuda. So, when it comes to Shacharis, we know the halachas like Rebbe Yehuda that you only have the first 4 hours to daven Shmona Esrei. Since the Mishnah in Idios goes according to him. But now my shaila is, do we also paskin like Rebbe Yehuda by the laws of Mincha, which means you'd only have until Plag, or do we paskin like the Chachamim that you have until evening? So Hachamai, so Ishtik v'lo Amar le v'lo midi. So he did not respond, Rav Yitzchak did not respond to the question at all. Amar Rav Chisda nechazei anon. So Rav Chisda just pondered out loud and said, well, let's think about this. Midarav matzli shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos miba'od yom shma mina halacha keRebbi Yehuda. The very fact that Rav took the liberty, we know that he used to daven on Erev Shabbos, he used to make early Shabbos, that's what we call it today, right? He used to go to the early minyan on Friday afternoons and accepted Shabbos early. So this is an indication that he paskins like Rebbe Yehuda in that the latest time to daven mincha is Plag, and so immediately after Plag he could accept Shabbos. So Adarabba.
That's not necessarily the latest time.
What's that?
By davening early, it's not necessarily saying that the latest time you can daven is Plag.
Well, that's the assumption of the Gemara. The Gemara is assuming. But give us a second. We got to speak it out. So the Gemara now says, Adarabba, midar Rav Huna v'Rabbanan lo havu matzlu ad urta shma mina ein halacha keRebbi Yehuda. But the Gemara says, but I could give a counter argument. The very fact that the other Amoraim, Rav Huna and the Rabbanan, waited until evening to daven, to accept Shabbos and to daven Ma'ariv for Shabbos indicates that we don't paskin like Rebbe Yehuda, because otherwise why didn't they accept Shabbos early? So now the Gemara says, Hashta de lo itmar hilchas lo kemar velo kemar, da avid kemar avid or da avid kemar avid. So the Gemara basically says as follows: we don't have a resolution on how to paskin, but we do have precedents for some rabbis who went like Rebbe Yehuda and daven Ma'ariv after Plag, and some rabbis who went like the Chachamim and only would daven Ma'ariv after Shkia, and therefore as a result you have the option of going according to either or. However, the poskim do speak out that the fact that you have the option of going like either or is an indication that you have to be consistent. In other words, you can't just like flip-flop every single day. Today I'll daven before, I'll daven Ma'ariv after Plag, and also you have to be consistent in the sense of the very same day you should not daven Mincha after Plag and Ma'ariv before Shkia, because then it's a chamer, what they call a chamer gamel. It's sort of like a paradox, right? So you either have to daven Mincha before Plag and Ma'ariv after Plag, or daven Mincha before Shkia and Ma'ariv after Shkia. There is an allowance in the Mishnah Berurah who says that when it comes to Kabbalah Shabbos, if the tzibur is only available at a set time, and this is what certain communities do. In a community such as ours, which is more educated, so we switch the time for early Shabbos every week, commensurate to the Zman of Plag. But there are other communities, let's say less sophisticated communities, perhaps, where if we would change the time every week, people wouldn't show up, right? So and they set, like they say, in the summer, Shabbos, Kabbalah Shabbos is at 6:30 every week until we change the clock. That's acceptable, even though some weeks you're not going to make the before plug and after plug cutoff time. Okay? But lechatchila, for sure, you should always either, daven mincha before plug and marv after plug, or before shkia and after shkia. Okay, Rabbi l'labei geniva v'tzali shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. So the Gemara now brings a ma'isa that Rav came to the Beis Medrash of Geniva, and he prayed the Shabbos davening while it was still light outside on Friday. V'havamatzli Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba la'achure de Rav. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba was davening behind Rav. V'siyem Rav v'lo paski litzluse. And when Rav took note of the fact that Rabbi Yirmiyah was still davening Shmona Esrei, he made sure not to walk in front of him after he finished his Shmona Esrei. The Rabbi Yirmiyah. Shmami not loss. So we learned three things. Shmami no mispalal adam shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. One thing we learned from this story is that you are allowed to daven, make what we call make early Shabbos. Number two, Shmami no mispalal talmid achorei rabo. We also learned that a student is allowed to daven behind his Rebbe, even though that might be a little presumptuous in the sense that you're davening proximally to your Rebbe. Ushmami no asur lavar keneged hamispalalim. And the third thing we learn is that when someone else is davening Shmona Esrei, you're not allowed to walk in front of them. Misayele Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. This supports Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Dam Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi asur lavar keneged hamispalalim. He said that you're not allowed to walk in front of someone who's in the middle of the Amida. Eini v'ha Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi chalfi. Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi. Chalfi? Question mark. Didn't they tend to do such a practice? They did walk in front of people in the Beis Medrash. So the Gemara answers Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi chutz la'arba amos hu dechalfi. There, when they would walk in front of someone, they made sure that they were more than Dalet Amos away from the person, so as not to go into sort of his space. The Rabbi Yirmiyah, Heichi Avid Hachi. So now the Gemara asks, but how could Rabbi Yirmiyah daven behind Rav? The Ha'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav la'olam al yispalol adam lo keneged Rabbo v'lo achorei Rabbo. That a person should not daven next to his Rebbe or behind his Rebbe. And Vitanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer hamispalol achorei Rabbo v'hanosin shalom l'Rabbo v'machzer shalom l'Rabbo v'alacholik al yeshivaso shel Rabbo. That if a person, Rabbi Eliezer says that if a person davens behind his Rebbe, or if a person says shalom to his Rebbe, and Rashi explains, and Rashi and Tosfos both explain that what this means is not that it's usher to say hello to your Rebbe, but you say hi Rebbe instead of saying, or you say hi. You don't even give him the proper kavod of giving him the proper appellation, the proper title. You don't say shalom alecha. You just say shalom alecha. You don't say shalom alecha Rebbe. And v'hamachzer shalom l'Rabbo. And if you just say aleichem shalom without saying Rebbe, v'hacholek al yeshivaso shel Rabbo. What does this mean? V'hacholek al yeshivaso shel Rabbo. That I guess if you
doesn't agree with it.
Yes, maybe I think that's what it means.
Yeah.
That if a person disagrees with a position that his Rebbe makes, I think that's what it means.
They say he makes his own yeshiva. Right.
Or he sets aside, he divides, he splits off. He splits off from his Rebbe and he makes his own place of study. Okay, very good, thank you. The Ha'omer Davar Shelo Shama Mipi Rabbo, or if he hears something that he never heard from his Rebbe, meaning that he basically extrapolates inappropriately. Gorem l'shechina shetistalek mi Yisrael. Then he causes the divine presence to depart from Israel. Why? Because you're acting in a chutzpahdik fashion. So you see that even davening behind your Rebbe is considered to be a form of arrogance, right? Because you presume that it's okay, you're like second in command behind your Rebbe. So the Gemara says, Shiny Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, the Talmud Chaver Hava. The answer is Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba was different because he wasn't a pure Talmud. He was what's called the Talmud Chaver, which means a junior partner, so to speak. Like he was also one of the rabbis, but he was younger. But at the same time, he was considered to be a junior colleague. Okay, V'hainu dekamar le Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba l'Rav mi badlis, and we have a ma'isa that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, in continuation of this story, he said to Rav, "Did you make Havdalah?" in talking to him in a story about Motzoi Shabbos. Amar lei in badilna v'lo amar mi badil mar. So, and he didn't say to him, did the master make Havdalah? So you see from here that he was a Talmud Chaver because he didn't feel it was necessary to give him the proper appellation of the teacher. So now the Gemara says, Umi Badil. So since when would it be okay for Rav to make Havdalah? B'ha'amar Rebbe Abin Pam Echas Yispalal Rebbe Shal Shabbos Be'erev Shabbos B'nichnas L'merchatz V'yatza V'shana Lan Pirkin V'adayin Lo Chashcha. So, but didn't we once learn that Rebbe once accepted Shabbos, and this was so what was the one second? I'm sorry. Mi badlus doesn't mean did you make Havdalah. Mi badlus means did you stop? Did you desist from work after you accepted Shabbos? That was the case over here. Rabbi Yirmiyah, in continuation of the story, he asked Rav after he made early Shabbos, did you desist from work? And Rav said, yes, I desisted from work because once I davened Shmon Esrei for Ma'ariv, I was Makabel Shabbos and therefore I'm not allowed to work anymore. So the Gemara says, but since why is that necessary? But don't we have a Maisa that Rabbi Abin once testified that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi once accepted Shabbos early, and v'nichnas l'merchatz, and then he went into the bathhouse, and the assumption is that it was prohibited to take a shvitz on Shabbos, because the Chachamim were gozer taking a shvitz on Shabbos, and yet we see that he did this. V'yatza v'shalal on pirkin, v'adayin lo chashcha, and he taught us, gave us a shir, and it had not yet become dark, and so you see that you're not obligated to desist from labor, because we see that Rebbe went to take a shvitz even after he davened on Friday afternoon. So Amar Rava Hu denichnas lahaziyah b'koydem gezeira hava. The answer is that he wasn't taking a full bath; he was just taking a shvitz, and this was before the Chachamim were goes there that you can't go into a merchatz on Shabbos in order to take a shvitz. So at one point they made this gezeira, but Rebbe did this beforehand, so he felt there was no violation of Shabbos and it was perfectly fine. Frek the Gemara Eini v'habaya shori leila ravdimi bar livoi lechabruye sali. But there was also another situation where Abaya permitted Ravdimi, who had davened early Shabbos, and he still permitted him to lechabruye sali, to smoke the baskets. In other words, apparently what the practice was that they would I guess for deodorizing purposes, they would put things in baskets and they would put them over, or they would take baskets and use certain kinds of limestone to line them, I guess, to properly process these baskets. So apparently this was a violation of Shabbos, and Abaya permitted Rav Dimi to do this, even though he had already accepted Davin Ma'ariv. So the Gemara answers Hahu Ta'usa Havoy. So the Gemara answers that in that situation, the reason why they accepted or they davened Ma'ariv early was because it was a cloudy day and they thought that Shabbos had come in early. In other words, they thought mistakenly that it was already dark, and once the clouds cleared and they realized that it wasn't yet Shabbos, Abaya permitted them to do malacha because they accepted Shabbos in error. Frek the Gemara Utausa Mihadra. Since when do we say that just because you made an error, then you're allowed to negate your acceptance of Shabbos? V'ha'amar avidan pamechas niskashu shamayim ba'avim kisuvurim ha'am lomer chashchahu. That once upon a time he testified that the sky is filled with clouds, and people thought that it was already dark. And v'nichnas lebeis hakneses v'hispalalu shel motzoi Shabbos b'Shabbos. And everyone came in on Shabbos afternoon, Saturday afternoon. They thought that Shabbos was over, and so they davened Ma'ariv. V'nispazru ha'avim v'zarcha ha'chama uba v'shaloas Rebbe. And then all of a sudden the clouds clear, and they realize that it's still the middle of the day, and they went and asked Rebbe, is it necessary for us to daven a second time? V'amar hol v'hispalalu hispalalu. And Rebbe said that, listen, if you already davened, you davened. Now Rashi over here points out that Rebbe wasn't telling them it's okay now to do malacha because it's still midioraisa, it's still Shabbos. But what he was telling them is that even if you daven Ma'ariv in error, b'di'evet it counts. So the Gemara's Havamina is Well, the same thing should be that if I was Makabal Shabbos already in error, so then my Kabbalah Shabbos should count at least, and I should be prohibited to do Malacha because I made a declaration of Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Shani Tzibor Delo Matrichinun Lahu. The answer is that there's a difference between when an individual accepts Shabbos in error and the community accepts Shabbos in error. When a community accepts Shabbos in error, then we don't nullify their acceptance of Shabbos or their davening of Ma'ariv, and we say that b'di'evad dir yotzei, whatever they davened, even if they davened in error, thinking that it was the nighttime when it was really daytime. But when an individual does it in error, then we say no, your Ma'ariv is null and void because you thought it was nighttime when it was daytime. You should daven again, and as a result, it was permitted to do malacha because the Kabbalah Shabbos was null and void. Amr Reb Chia bar Abin, Rav Tzali shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. So Reb Chia bar Abin testified that Rav used to make early Shabbos, and Rabbi Yoshia Matzli shel Motzoi Shabbos b'Shabbos. And Rabbi Yoshia, he testified, would daven early Ma'ariv on Saturday afternoon. Now, granted, he wouldn't do malacha, but he was that did not stop him from allowing himself to daven an early Ma'ariv. Now, of course, this has no bearing on Kriya Shema. He'd have to go say Kriya Shema again when it was the proper time, but at least he was permitted to daven Ma'ariv early. Rav Tzali shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos, and so by the way, Tosfos points out that even though it is permitted technically to daven Ma'ariv early on Saturday evening before it's totally dark, nevertheless, that should only be done when a person has a compelling reason to do so. If there's really something pressing that has to be taken care of Motzoi Shabbos, like a Devar Mitzvah, then we allow you to daven Ma'ariv early. But under normal circumstances, l'chatchila, a person should always wait for nightfall before davening Ma'ariv on Motzoi Shabbos. Rav Tzali shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos Omer Kiddush al HaKos, Ein Omer Kiddush al HaKos. So now the shaila that the Gemara asks, when Rav accepted Shabbos early in his Ma'ariv, was it permitted for him to make Kiddush also early or not? In other words, accepting Shabbos on a cup of wine. So the Gemara says, Tashmad Amar of Nachman Amar Shmuel Mispal Adam Shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos Omer Kiddush al HaKos, and he's allowed to make Kiddush also early. The Hilchas Kavase, and the halacha is like him. Rabbi Yoshia Matzli Shel Motzoi Shabbos b'Shabbos, and Rabbi Yoshia made a davened early Ma'ariv on Saturday evening before it was dark. Omer Havdalah al HaKos, I know Omer Havdalah al HaKos. So was he permitted to make Havdalah early? Now here we're not talking about using the flame, obviously, because if it's still Shabbos, you can't say Borei Me'orei Ha'esh. But the question is, what about if you wanted to make Havdalah al HaKos, and yet you make your Borei Me'orei Ha'esh later on? Is that okay? So Tashma, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Mispal Adam Shel Motzoi Shabbos b'Shabbos, Omer Havdalah al HaKos. Yes, you're allowed to do that as well. Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rav, B'tzad Amod Zeh, Hispalal Rabbi Shmuel b'Rav Yossi Shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. They testified that by this pillar, Rabbi Shmuel b'Rav Yossi accepted Shabbos early and davened Ma'ariv on Friday afternoon before it was dark. Ki asa Ula Amar b'tzad Tamara Hava. So Ula came along and he said, by the way, it wasn't next to this pillar, it was next to that date tree. Below b'tzad or b'tzad Tamara Hava. Below b'tzad Amar Hava. Below Rabbi Shmuel b'Rav Yossi Hava Ella Rabbi Elazar b'Rav Yossi Hava. And furthermore, it was not Rabbi Shmuel b'Rav Yossi, but it was rather Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi. And velo shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos hava ela shel motzoi Shabbos b'Shabbos hava. And furthermore, it wasn't Friday afternoon that he davened Ma'ariv early; it was Saturday afternoon that he davened Ma'ariv early. But other than that, you got everything right. It's like that song. Yes, I remember it well, right? And now it could also be that they were thinking about two different episodes, but apparently no. Ula says no, that's not the way the story went. Tfilas ha'erev ein la keva. Next. We had said in the Mishnah that there's no fixed time for davening Ma'ariv. You can daven Ma'ariv the entire evening. So my ein la keva. So what do those words mean? It has no fixed time. Ilema de boy matzli kuli lelia. If it strictly means that you can daven Ma'ariv the whole night, listening to tfilas erev kol halayla, then you should have been more explicit and said you can daven Ma'ariv the entire night. But why does it mean it has no set time? Elamai ein la keva. Commando Omar tfilas arvis rishus. It goes according to the Mando Omar, who says that Ein La Keva means that not only that there's no fixed time, but really it's an optional prayer is really what it's telling you, is that it's not an obligatory prayer. Ein La Keva means it's not fixed as the other two prayers are. Damar Rav Yehuda Omar Shmuel Tfilas Arvis Rabbi Gamliel Omar Chayva Rabbi Shua Omar Rishus. This is a very important machlokas between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Gamliel says that it's an obligatory prayer, and Rabbi Yehoshua says it's a rishus. And if you look at the margin note, v'hilchasa kedivrei ha'omer chova, v'rav omer halacha kedivrei ha'omer rishus. And as a machlokas how we paskin, and omer Rabbi halacha kedivrei ha'omer chova, v'rav omer halacha kedivrei ha'omer rishus. And this is also machlokas Abaye and Rava. And me'ikar hadin we paskin like Rava that Ma'ariv is a rishus, but the Jewish people accepted upon themselves to daven Ma'ariv. And that's why women, in general, even though women daven Shachris and Mincha, they never accepted upon themselves to take the obligation of Ma'ariv, and therefore women generally do not daven Ma'ariv; they only daven Shachris and Mincha. Tana Rabbanan. And now we get into some really interesting Agadata.
Which He doesn't have to say over again.
No, once we accepted it upon. I see what you're saying. Yes, I stand corrected. You're absolutely right. If a person at Ma'ariv didn't say Yala V'Yavo, so there's a Tosfos who says that B'di'evid you don't have to go back and say Shemona Esrei because technically Ma'ariv is a Tfilas Rishus. Very good.
The reason because the Bezin didn't meet at night to identify.
That's also brought in Tosfos that Ein Mekadshin Es HaChodesh Balayla. It's also a reason brought down by Tosfos. Oh wow, you're bringing back. I got to clear out the cobwebs. Tana Rabbanan Ma'aseh V'Talmud Echad Shebo Lifnei Rabbi Yehoshua. So there was once a story about a student who came before Rabbi Yehoshua, and he started to make trouble. Listen how sometimes the Talmidim can make trouble. Amar lei tfilas arvis rishus oichayva. He asked him, Rebbe, is it obligatory or optional to daven Ma'ariv? Amar lei rishus. He said it's optional. V'olifnei Rabban Gamliel. Amar lei tfilas arvis rishus ochova. Amar lei chova. Then he came to Rabban Gamliel. And then what he did was highly inappropriate. Because you don't start making problems, because what he's doing, he's shopping around, and then he's going to start making, but he said that, and he said that, right? He asked Rabbi Gamliel, is it obligatory or optional? And Rabbi Gamliel says it's obligatory. Rabbi Yeshua told me that it's optional. So wait until the masters of the shields, which refers to the Talmidei Chachamim of the Beis Medrash, who are like fighters, like warriors. Let's wait till they come in. So there the questioner, this Talmud, raised the question again in the presence of the whole assembly. He said, is it obligatory or is it optional? Armalei Rabban Gamliel Chayva. So Rabban Gamliel, who's the Rosh Mesifta, he's the Nasi, he says that, I paskin that it's obligatory. Rabbi Gamliel then said, is there anyone among the sages who disagrees with this psak? Rabbi Yehoshua, who was the elder statesman of the sages, said, no, of course not. So Rabbi Gamliel then says, but you've been quoted as saying that it's an optional prayer, not as the Aipaskin. So he said, Yehoshua, stand on your feet and let them testify about you. In other words, who is they? Presumably the people who have heard their psak, let them testify about what you said. So Amar Rabbi Yeshua al Raglav Omar. Rabbi Yeshua stood on his feet and he said as follows, Ilmoli ani chai v'hu meis, yachol hachai lahachish es ameis, v'achshav shani chai v'hu chai, hech yachol hachai lahachish es achai. He says, look, I'm alive and he's alive. If I were alive and my accuser was dead, I could always contradict him. Wishful thinking, basically. But now that he's alive and I'm alive, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has allowed him to remain alive, must mean that Hashem wants this machlokes to happen. I can't deny it. You're right, Rabbi Gamliel. It is true that I truthfully did say that I hold that it's a rishus. So here Rabbi Gamliel Yoshe V'dorish, Rabbi Yeshua Omed al Raglav. So Rabbi Gamliel, in order to exert his authority, because he perceived that this was a threat to the Nesios, that this was a threat to the monarchy, so to speak, or the princedom of the Jewish people, continued to have Rabbi Yehoshua stand this entire time while he was continuing to giving shir. And Rabbi Yehoshua was an elder statesman, so this, of course, is a public humiliation of this great sage. People couldn't take it. They felt that this was such a degradation of Rabbi Yeshua's honor. They told Chutzpis HaMeturgaman, who was he was the fellow who would listen to the shir from Rabbi Gamliel, and then would announce it and put it into the language of the Hamon so that everyone could understand it. And they told Chutzpis, no more. We're not going to listen to you. Please stop translating. And so he stopped. Amri at Kamen Nitzari V'Nezel. He said, and they said, for how much longer must we endure this dishonor and this pain caused to our Rebbe Yoshua? Rosh Hashanah ishtakat sa'arei. Last year on Rosh Hashanah, he caused Rabbi Yeshua anguish. There's a story about how Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua disagreed on what day Rosh Hashanah fell out that year, and Rabbi Gamliel demanded that Rabbi Yoshua show up on the day that was Yom Kippur, according to Rabbi Yoshua, and to be Machalal Yom Kippur, to show that you're subservient to my authority. And the Bechoros, the Maisa de Reb Tzadok Tzirei, and there was a case by an animal Bechor where he also forced Rabbi Yehoshua to submit to his authority when there was a machlokes. So hachanami tzarei. So here too, he's going to cause him anguish, to afflict him like this. Ta v'na avre. So let us go, and we're going to have to kick Rabbi Gamliel off his post. In other words, he's pushed it too far. He's gone too far. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. So ma no kimle. So who should we appoint in his stead? Nukme la Rabbi Yehoshua bal maisahu. To appoint Rabbi Yehoshua in his stead, who's really the most worthy, that we cannot do because he's the cause of all of this, and he's involved in this, and people will say that there was an ulterior motive, so we can't do that. Nukme la Rabbi Akiva dilma anishle delesle zuchosavos. If we appoint Rabbi Akiva, who's also worthy, then but Rabbi Akiva doesn't have zchusavos because he's descended from Gerim, and therefore maybe something tragic would happen to him, and he will not be successful in his Messias. So Ella nukmi l'Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah duhu chacham v'hu asher. So let us appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Number one, he's wise. Number two, he's wealthy. V'hu asiri la'Ezra, and in his pedigree, he is the 10th generation from Ezra. Hu chacham de'imakshile mefarikle. He is wise because whatever you ask him, he'll answer. V'hu asher de'i islei lefluchi lebei Kesar. Afu azulu polach. Someone translate this for me. He's wealthy, that if there's something at the Caesar's palace, then he also goes and he prostrates himself. I didn't understand.
He'll be able to go and deal with them.
He'll be able to go and deal. In other words, if we need someone to be obsequious to the Caesar's palace, then he'll be the one to go because he represents the financial clout of the community. Right, a shadlon, right? Yeah. The hu asiri la Ezra the isleis chusavos, and he's the 10th generation from Ezra, and therefore he has the merit of his ancestors. V'lo matzi anishle, and therefore he don't have to face the potential consequences of being in a leadership position. So asu va'amrulei nichale lamar deli haviresh mesifta. So they went and approached Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and they said to him, "Would you like to be now the new Rosh Mesifta, the new head of the Beis Medrash?" Amr lahu ezel ve'imlich be'anshi beisi. Let me ask the members of my household. Basically, I got to go ask my wife. See, this is where Jewish men know that you don't make any decisions until you ask your wife. Azel ve'amlich b'dfisu. So he went and asked his wife. So Amr lei dilma ma'avrin lecha. So she said, well, what if they kick you out just like they kicked out Rabbi Gamliel? Why would you want to put yourself in that position? Which is, of course, a rational fear. It's a legitimate fear. So Amar La Lishtamesh Inish Yom Achada Bekasa Drumokra Ulamachar Litva. He says it's worthwhile to use fine crystal even for one day, even if it's going to break the next day. In other words, better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Or better to rise to greatness and to lose it than to never rise to greatness at all. Life is worth the joys and the tragedies than not to have anything at all. And this was such what a obviously it's a universal message, but of course Chazal many times echo these universal ideas that if someone were to tell you that you were going to have a child and then lose the child, Rahman al-Litzlan, would you still choose to have it? So this is, of course, the age-old question: to have your heart filled and then for it to be broken, or to never have had your heart filled at all. And so this is what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's position was: better that I should have my heart filled with greatness and be able to rise to my potential, even if I will fall afterwards at least I can say that I've done something in my life that's of value. So Amrale leslach chivarta. So she said to him, there was only one problem. You're a young man. He was only 18 years old at the time, and your beard is not gray yet, right? So hahu yoma bar tamani srei shnei hava, and that day he was only 18. Israchesh le'nisa v'hadru le'tamani srei dori chivarta. And on that day, I guess a miracle took place, and 18 rows of white hair magically appeared in his beard. So I don't know if that was just a result of a miracle, or was it by virtue of the fact that he accepted the post? Because I've noticed a lot of gray hairs lately. Anyway,
Obama also got gray quick.
Yeah, that's true. Hainu deka'amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Hareani kiven shivim shana v'lo ben shivim shana. And that's why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I am like a 70-year-old man, as we read in the Haggadah, right? And we saw it previously in the Mishnah, right? I didn't know why we should say the third paragraph of Shema until Ben Zoma explained it to me. And it doesn't say that I am 70 years old. He says, I'm like a 70-year-old man because I look like I'm 70, even though I'm still a younger man. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. We'll continue the story tomorrow. Have a great